Шановні колеги, ми розпочинаємо сьогоднішній круглий стіл. Привіт. Да. Ну,
Dear colleagues, we will begin our round table right now. We have invited many members of parliament, invited representatives of cabinet of ministers, but unfortunately many of our government officials are busy with parliament, and we have called this session whether we should revive or forget, because Donbas became the war zone through the actions of terrorists and Russian regular forces. Infrastructure is destroyed, social buildings are destroyed, the big companies who have created a significant part of Ukrainian GDP also have been destroyed, and now this issue is of big concern to politicians, and many of them are hoping to redistribute funds provided for restoration of Donbas. And I have invited experts. We have invited experts, and I'm very thankful to them. And we are going to talk about many issues related to calculations of losses, the amounts of investment necessary for Donbas, corruption component. That's number two. Third is who would be restoring Donbas, specially created state agency of the government. This agency was created on 10th of September, and even the leader of the agency was appointed, but today he resigned because he was under the law of lustration, and he is now acting chief of the agency. Another issue is the work of volunteer organizations that try to assist. So these are the issues we would like to discuss with you, talking about amounts already allocated or guaranteed by specific letters of guarantee. Kiev Urbanistic Bureau made our own calculations, and we have given you these press releases, and you can turn it over and see the funds allocated for Donbas. According to Tyzhdyn magazine, in November, 300 million hryvnias were allocated to the districts controlled by Ukrainian government, and territories controlled by terrorists or Russian troops are not included. We know that European Bank for Reconstruction and Development decided to allocate 700 million euro to restore Donbas. European Commission has given 22 million euros. Assistance from the United States was $7 million. UN allocated $700,000. Japanese government allocated $5 million. Children Fund has allocated funds for helping families and children of Donbas. 25 million to build housing on territory of Kharkiv region to provide housing for IDPs. So we calculated that total amount by the end of November. The funds allocated come to over $600 million. And I said that government made their own calculation, but I don't know who has given this small amount to Arsen Yatsenyuk. 10 billion hryvnias is 700 million American dollars. So this amount would be at least 30 times more. So, and finally, we'll end up more than $20 million in restoration. Another issue we started discussing with Mr. Saakian, Oleh Saakian, how to restore damages of private property and small, medium-sized business. Many factories were destroyed, equipment taken out. Russian humanitarian convoys are bringing in weapons, and they remove equipment like equipment of a radio location system called Kalchu. It was taken out of Lugansk. So the proposal that we support and experts insist on says that citizens should have photo, video, documentation of the damages, lost companies, burned cars, broken houses, everything that would allow people to address the courts and demand compensation from Russian government. It would take years to solve, if it can be solved at all. But we need a lot of proof, because Russian Federation officially denies the fact that it takes any participation in the conflict. Here I will conclude my presentation, and I will give the floor to the person who is known economist, Borys Kushniruk, who will give better expert assessment. Good afternoon. The thing is, the amounts of damage. I don't like numbers. I'm an economist by profession, but I don't like numbers, because numbers never are exact. You can give different assessments, different estimations, and they would differ from one to the other, talking about damages and reconstruction of infrastructure in Donbas, restoration of those buildings. Well, the war continues, and every day there is damage added. Railways, bridges are destroyed, gas supply lines, electricity lines, and infrastructure buildings are destroyed. New costs occur. So we can talk about final amounts only after the war completely stops. When someone, and I'm not saying Ukraine, when someone controls territories and there is no more destruction, no more explosions, as long as the war continues, the damage cannot be fully estimated. Then, second, how do you calculate? As we talk about majority of places, many cannot be restored. In some cases, mines are filled with water. In some cases, water cannot be evacuated, in some cases not. So they will be closed. Third, technological state. Some companies should not be restored, not because they cannot be restored, but from Ukrainian interest standpoint, the task is to stop working in third technological order. Economic science, economic history says that third economic stage is middle 1800s through 1930s. Yuzovka, when it was created, at the end of 1800s, extracting ore, coal, following this technology. Second World War delayed conclusion of this stage because in the beginning of 1950s we still needed those resources. Then the world moved on while we preserved in Donbas not effective system of these companies. Even in Soviet times, when Kuzbas ore was removed in Siberia, Kuzbas coal was removed because the layers were very small, very deep, a lot of security expenses and safety costs. All this still in 1970s made this Donbas region as not effective. This depressive territory remained depressive, and this caused significant layering of population, where more than 1 million poor people and a small number of rich ones. So whose fault is that? Well, we were preparing for a long time the grounds for these events, because the question is not just external aggression from Russia, which is important and significant and plays its role, but we'd be honest to recognize that many people support those separatists. Many, maybe a majority of Donbas citizens, if we talk about territories. The village areas might be differing, but in coal areas, in mines and factories, support of separatists is very high, based on the fact that Soviet Union life was better, and Russia is nearby, and they promote this idea of Soviet greatness, and if that's where we go, that's where we will be happy. And this is this value system. Another important thing, when they ask me, what do you think about freezing the conflict? I agree, because it's more beneficial for Ukraine. Imagine Russia would fully leave. What do we do with mentality of population? They haven't changed. We haven't changed, because really, if you want to offer the paradigm that the new paradigm, or try to fight their paradigm, the disappointment would be still greater. So we need to build new model of social relations to make it more transparent and stronger. Then the question of Donbas would not be about restoring the mines. In majority, they need to be closed. I think supporting coal is supporting terrorism in Donbas using government money. These are equivalent concepts to me. If we want to support terrorists, then let's say we want to change nothing in Donbas. We want to remain in corruption schemes. Donbas should be restored, but not through restoring this third technological stage, but we need to rebuild territories in a new way. But we need to be different. We need to be new. Imagine Putin really leaves Donbas. Let's imagine, and I imagine that was fear. What do we do with the territory in the state of Kiev government today? We will not be able to change anything. So ideology, agency to restore Donbas. In today's language means restoring the stealing of money like before, when companies of Medvedev will receive the orders, as well as Refremov's companies and Yanukovych company, who caused this kind of division in the first place. I don't want to allow things like that. That is a wrong way. We need to clearly understand that in our best hopes, this indefinition of the territory would remain for several more years, during which time Ukraine would reform and become a positive example to Donbas, and then we have chance to restore the territory and return them.
What do you mean, the positive sample, the positive example? They do not take Europe as the example for them. That is, if we become more European, that won't be an argument for them. Well, I would like to explain in more detail. Even last year, even before all that events, I stated that Russian economy was going to recession because the model of raw material income, the income based on mineral resources, is rather vulnerable in terms of the oil prices, global oil prices. Moreover, I stated that corrupt model in Russian economy, it would worsen the situation in Russia. Actually, our deterioration of our relations with Russia last year worsened because demand on Ukrainian goods was lowering, investments to Russian economy was lowering, and demand on so-called investment goods was lowering. That is pipes, machines, turbines, etc., what we supply to Russia. This proves that the situation in the Russian economy, with consideration of the sanctions applied by Western countries, the economic situation will worsen. During that period of time, Ukraine has a chance to improve the situation inside Ukraine. And when there will be chaos in Russian Federation, while in Ukraine, we will manage to change the paradigm in terms of public spending, transparency, in terms of national or public ownership over the processes which are happening in society. That is, people will clearly see how the situation will be changed, and that it would be better to live in Ukraine than in Russia. In May, I visited Donetsk. It was my first visit to Donetsk. And I had to deliver a lecture. And the lecture was called that you won't be able to build up a flourishing city without strong local community. And my main message was that without ownership of people in their local communities, you won't be able to build up a good life in those local communities. In Donbas, people very much depended on oligarchs. They did not feel themselves like full owners of in their local communities. And unless we manage to build up this public ownership, feeling of public ownership in all spheres, we will not be able to develop better life in Ukraine. Now we are ready to connect with Kramatorsk with Mr. Didula, who is manager of the project Building Ukraine Together. And while we try to establish connection, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Roman Pomazan, head of the Urban Sustain Architecture and BABLOWSKY project. We will interrupt you as soon as the connection is established. Good afternoon. Can you hear us? Yuri, can you hear us? Yes, I can hear you. Yuri, now we're having a roundtable at the Ukrainian Crisis Media Center. We have Mr. Dmytro Kushniruk, Mr. Oleh Saakian here in the room, and we are discussing the corruption component and rebuilding of Donbas, revival of Donbas, whether this could be entrusted upon Ukrainian authorities or they should be put upon public or under public supervision. Maybe I will say a couple of words who we are and whom we represent. Back in July, we have started the project Building Ukraine Together. This is a volunteer movement, and 50 volunteers arrived to Kramatorsk, and within several months we rebuilt several objects in Kramatorsk and in Semenivka, a settlement near Kramatorsk. This was carried out at the account of business community from Lviv, from some Western sponsors, and some fundraising was done in a special fund via internet. And despite the fact that the donated money were not very big, but there were many people, and we managed to raise money for this reconstruction work. And I would like to say that this money which come to the reconstruction projects in Donbas. Yes, can you hear me? Yeah, please continue. Funds of international and volunteer organizations which arrive to our account, they are used in right way. They are used properly. The financing which comes from central budget and which are spent by local authorities. A lot of them are laundered and are stolen, actually. And in result of the several scandals which we witnessed here in terms of spending public money, I may say that it is more efficient to spend money for reconstruction via organizations like our. Mr. Saakian has a question. What facilities are you rebuilding now? Whether these are residential houses for IDPs, these are buildings of local residents which were ruined, or these are enterprises. Maybe we cannot provide a full answer. But traveling around the city, we may state that these are residential multi-storied buildings which are rebuilt, and private houses. The government tries to rebuild the infrastructure objects, orphanage buildings. I believe that volunteer organizations and international organizations try to assist individual people, while the state tries to assist in reconstruction of public buildings. I think this is a fair approach. And another question, those buildings which are private houses and which are rebuilt, whether there is just rebuilding or modernization from energy saving point of view. Whether they become more energy saving, is it or this is simply technical revival? Whether you are making it more energy efficient. Unfortunately, I do not think that people are thinking about this pragmatic aspects. I can give you a practical example. As volunteers, we provided human resources and cooperated with Caritas and people in need, international organizations. People in need provided us with materials for roofs, and Caritas allowed us to get other construction materials. And in Kramatorsk, we just finished a building where we installed the roof and windows, and this illustrates that we are unable to think about energy saving aspects because it is beyond our financial opportunities, and we had no time to think about this. That's why I do not think that both the state and volunteer organizations, when carrying out reconstructions of the building, they are thinking about their energy efficiency. Thank you. I understand. And maybe the last question to you. We know that for many years, unofficial owner of Donbas was the richest person in Ukraine, Mr. Rinat Akhmetov. Now, he says that they provide big humanitarian assistance, at least his foundations provide this assistance. And if yes, could you mention those objects which he supported? I am not competent to state about provision of assistance and humanitarian aid, but now and then I read in newspapers that computers were provided to the orphanage, that this or that. Things were supplied somewhere. In Kramatorsk, we have owners of 3 huge industrial plants. They very deeply participated, in full scale participated in reconstruction of the objects here in Kramatorsk. And when you ask people who provide any assistance to them, they always mention that big plants. I'm not sure whether this is true or not, but this is a real trend here. Local oligarchs and local business elite is very much involved to the reconstruction process. Yuri, thank you very much for this discussion, and I believe that your information is very meaningful, and I believe that the discussion which we have been starting today will reach a full scale at the moment when we will start reconstruction in Donbas. I believe that our overall objective is to ensure that there is no corruption there in process of reconstruction, and that it is efficient. Now I'd like to give the floor to Mr. Pomazan, excuse me. Staying in Kharkiv this fall, I got a feeling that the conflict is of a long-term nature. Kharkiv is not within the ATO zone, but our pre-border location is rather well felt, and people have stopped planning for tomorrow. This reminds me the philosophy of Gobseck, famous Balzac's character, who had been planning for one day only. This has become the philosophy of local communities, actually. Why I am mentioning this? Because under this social climate, it is impossible to speak about revival of Donbas since people do not plan for the future. They think about repairing the roof over their house, but not about more long-term terms. If we are speaking about a long-term transformation of this territory, we should think in a 20-year or 50-year perspective. It had been never planned for this perspective in Ukraine. Each government which came to power in Ukraine was chosen new directions, new political course, and the entire development of the country and the entire development of the infrastructure in the country was not coordinated and well planned. I believe that this should be changed, and to begin this transformation, we should involve civil society organizations to broad discussion with the state, how we should develop the country and how we have to integrate Donbas in our country. This should be a comprehensive and very long-term strategy accounting for 2-3 generations of Ukrainians. As for those territories which are now damaged, where infrastructure is ruined, they do not have independent communities which would be able to support, to maintain newly constructed objects. Here, I do not mean the old plans. I mean that if we want to create business clusters in those small towns or cities, we won't have a sufficient number of business-minded people there. We should have tax incentives like Russian Tsarism introduced when populating southern eastern areas and provided good opportunities for business development there. I believe that creating such strong business development opportunities, we will be able to revive Donbas and to shape it in new form and provide it with a future. I have a comment here. I think comparison to development of the United States or to the Russian Empire is not proper comparison in our case, because it was based on free choice. People were free, and maximum freedom was provided for people at that time. Let us assume that you provide people in Donbas with freedom today, and what they will do, this will be used by those people who actually could be blamed in today's situation in Donbas. You should state to what you are going to streamline that taxes or tax liberations. If people should have that feeling of ownership. If you wish to restore your house, you should have your own responsibility in reconstruction of this house. People should participate financially in the reconstruction of the houses. We may assist in installation of various meters in the house, heating meter, electricity meter, water consumption meter, etc. But those people should have this feeling of ownership. Thank you very much. Now let us give the floor to Mr. Oleh Saakian. He has been waiting for a while now, and he knows what's going on in Donbas. I agree with Mr. Donbas almost in everything except for that proletarian identity to which he claimed. Actually, that proletarian identity was brought up during Soviet times, and since 1991, it was supported by communists, by a party of the regions, and they appeal towards proletarian proud, etc. Today, we have separately Donbas and separately Donetsk region. Speaking about Donbas, we understand this industrial region. Which region do you mean? This is the south of Luhansk region. This is clearly seen on the map. This is industrialized region, and the north of Donetsk region, from the north of Donetsk itself, Yinakiv, Gorgelivka, Krasnodon, Krasny Luch, Orlivka, etc. They are brightly and definitely separated from the rest of Donbas. We also have Donetsk region, we have Luhansk region, and we have Slobozhanщина, so-called, the old region in Ukraine. They are much different from Pridnestrovia, from Transnistria, and from Crimea. And here, Russian Federation appealed not to ethnical identity, but to the proletarian way of thinking, this movement became truly massive when there was an appeal towards social fairness, towards equal income, towards equity, asset equity among people. That is, today we see the encircling of this cluster of territories in a form which was peculiar for proletarian revolution. Speaking about rehabilitation of this region, we are thinking about economic reconstruction, whether we will revive some mines, whether we will revive environment, or whether we will think about not received income, whether we will think about other things, or such as rehabilitation and re-socialization of these territories. We should launch in the information space such a message that alongside with reconstruction of buildings, there should be done energy-saving reconstruction. Otherwise, we will go back to 20s and 30s of the 12th century.
So we need to change the general paradigm of understanding of the east of Ukraine, because looking back to beginning of these events, for the first time on 4th of March, Donetsk recognized we are Ukraine. People went to look and see how many people come. If there will be enough people, I will raise my flag. And when they saw people raising Ukrainian flags, several thousand of them, then a patriot in Donetsk was not on outcast, but real citizen to go against system, against police, against the government, against local elites. And this is the problem of restoring the free territories. Local elites remain the same. Local government and governance is the same, and Ukraine does no action to change the understanding of Ukraine by this region. If we say that the key is in socio-economic changes, yes, it's true, because proletariat can be attracted only by sausage. That's true, unfortunately, but there is activist layer of population, and the fight in Donetsk was among the activists. Some were raising proletariat, and I spoke to psychologists who were laughing. You understand, your patriots are excited, but we have hungry proletariat, and we'll see who wins. Our messages are different, and our people are different. And those who were raising those meetings, pro-Ukrainian meetings in Donetsk, were risking a lot, and they were expecting some actions from the government. So the key to change the situation is in the east is to change the attitude to free territories. And now we have the zone of new chance, where we need to try every further action to reintegrate the east of Ukraine, because today nobody has doubts that Donetsk was Ukraine and will remain Ukraine. It's not just a question of time when we return Donetsk, Lugansk, other cities. it would be a very good experience for Ukrainian state that was ignored for many years, to build our own identity, our own civil society, to build our own paradigm of building the state, with help of which we will be able to return Crimea, because their situation is very different. There is now destruction only in the minds, and destruction begins in the mind. Thank you. Example to support what Saakian said. I know some friends in Donbas, in picture from Kramatorsk, where in fact all police officers remain the same. They keep taking bribes. Those who drive need to pay bribes. You're not insured, so we'll take your driving license away. We will take your car away. And they're saying the highest court will come from Kiev, and they will punish you even more. We are good guys because we're cheaper. And they asked me about Cobra and other police units. No, the new ones are coming from Kiev, Kramatorsk. And when I asked them to record this information for me, they're afraid to say that, because if we don't change law enforcement there, nothing will happen. We have time just for 3 questions, so let's go there. If there are any questions, please. Andrei Schuler, Architecture Festival Connections. Are there any plans developed in black and white option? Restoration plan. What are the main directions? From what I need to say, State Agency on Restoration of Donbas, led by Andrei Nikolaenko. This person accused of threats and gathering together thugs to fight against Maidan, but he wrote a letter of resignation because he came from the past government, but the new agency was not created, and he remains acting chief until his replacement is appointed. The draft law on specific self-governance of Donetsk and Lugansk regions, but the president addressed the parliament to cancel that law because it doesn't reflect the realities of time. So today, the state does not have a reintegration plan, and I am scared to look at that plan because we live in Ukrainian Soviet Republic, and it could be reincarnation of the Soviet life. So we need to develop such a plan, maybe brave, to implement the changes that we want to see in Kyiv, in Dnipropetrovsk, in Odessa, to implement them in the east of Ukraine. This is a chance to introduce the changes that Ukraine requires. Where we were supposed to begin to make full replacement in law enforcement and to start paying police officers 8 to 10,000 hryvnias rather than 1 to 2, and they should consider saving Ukraine because it's more advantageous to receive honest money. Same thing with a prosecution with judges. All the judges, all the prosecution is very rotten there in Ukraine, and if you want to change something, then we need to change what we can today. We can, but the system remains unchanged so far. So the same police officers remain. Um, and they continue their actions that happens on the territories controlled by Ukraine. You need to understand that attitude towards Ukraine remains bad. So how they are better than criminals controlling other parts of Donbas? Well, there is very little difference, actually. I'd like to invite you to one thing. The problems of IDPs in east of Ukraine are the same problems that have always been in our country, and the changes needed here are needed there as well. They're the same, but uh, uh, they are not absurd. They're tragic. Every person feels such need physically, not just mentally. More questions, please, dear colleagues. Sergei Gudnyakov, Maninform. As far as I understand, strategy of restoration of Donbass is just being formed. In this strategy, do you plan rebuilding architectural complex of Donetsk and Lugansk, as was done in Brazil when the capital was built? Architectural know-how. For people to enjoy life in those buildings, because when in my city Mariupol, local police station was burned. So the radiation was morally much higher. Yes, in fact, to restore, we need some new innovation and architectural standards, but unfortunately, Brazil is not the best example. It's not a comfortable city for people. Berlin, yes. But for that to happen, we don't have legal infrastructure. We don't have a cadastre that would be following city building code. This is a big lay of work. By just creating agency, we cannot solve the problem. There is another initiative, Novy Donbas, to provide culture restoration in certain villages next to Kramatorsk, Mykolaiivka. They are restoring schools, making cultural events for children and local citizens. This is another civic initiative. I would not say much about government initiatives. I don't know. But a couple years ago, we heard Akhmetov's concern has developed a strategy of redevelopment of Donbas, including closing the mines to build factories of renewable energy. the wind and the solar energy. I think we should look it up online. Several years ago, a grant was allocated for the miners who are for them to become agrarians when mines are closed. Keep working as farmers. Keep earning. People did not follow this idea in mass. Make systemic changes with yourself, but the mental part, Ukrainian word was not enough for art festivals. So I'm just saying that we need to have Ukrainian culture as component, Ukrainian songs and everything. I'd like to add briefly that rebuilding of coal regions in England, Manchester, Leeds, has followed culture component. There were large programs with certain cultural circles, and a new society was built. So we need to go in this direction. You're right to say that architecture and cultural restoration of Donbas should happen, but there should be architectural change, but it should be symbolic and point by point. In Donetsk, every person needs to decide to plant flowers outside. The changes just happen in people's minds. Maybe Ukrainian culture is not enough. And the global question remains, what is Ukrainian culture today? Because society is tired. And we have Ani Lorek, the pop stars that follow demands of society, or Cossack dance want to cover every cultural need. So we need to build a new platform for brave art to build cultural identity of Ukraine, because the new culture needs to be adapted to today, but built on the history. If you have just one question, that's opportunity that we have no last question. So at this point, I'd like to conclude our round table to thank every participant for very meaningful discussion, and Yuriy Didula, who is connecting to us through Skype, and they have restored more than 20 facilities. They're really renovating Donbas while we are here in soft and warm Kyiv. Thank you, everyone, and the topic has demonstrated that it's big, and we need to continue it, but it will happen next year. Thank you.